together and together and together. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. If you're new, welcome. My name's Jane. My husband Mike does everything behind the camera. We're British early retirees. We've got no debt, we've paid off the mortgage, and we live a thrifty, frugal and money-saving life here in Brittany in northwest France. And every Friday we bring you something food related. And in our last video we shared some of those meals with you that, you know, if you're really broke and it's the end of the month and you haven't got much money, we shared those with you and they're really popular with you. So we've got another really good video for you this week. And this week I'm going to share with you the snacks that I made for my children, because I couldn't afford to go and buy them any snacks. I couldn't afford to go and buy them cookies or cakes or any kind of sweets or any kind of crisps or things. So I'm going to share with you today the 10 things that I used to make for the children. So they're things to take to school, or they had to do things to nibble on if they were hungry at home. So I hope you find these interesting and they will certainly save you some money. So one of the first things I used to make for the children, so they had a sort of sweet treat, was jam tarts. So I would make pastry. Pastry is so easy to make. It is half the weight, so half fat to flour. So if I use 300 grams of flour, I'd use 150 grams of fat, and lard is always the cheapest. And I rub in the lard into cubes, cut it into cubes, rub it in the flour, a bit of salt, roll it out into pastry, and use a pastry cutter, a cookie cutter, to make the jam tarts. Put that in a, well, you call it a tart case, you call it a muffin case, and a small spoonful of jam with each one. Jam's still reasonably affordable, and bake that in the oven for about 15 minutes. And jam tarts, let them go cold. They keep in a tin all week. So there's the first one, jam tarts. The next one that's really affordable to make, and much more affordable than buying it, is to make any kind of oat bars, flapjacks or oat cookies, making those at home. So if you look up a recipe for flapjacks, or if you look up a recipe for oat cookies or oat bars, they're really simple to make. And if you were worried about processed sugar or anything like that, dates can be bought quite cheaply. So as well as just eating the dates as a snack, you can use dates in the recipe to make what I call like a date goo. So I take the stones out of the dates, I cook the dates in some water after I've chopped them up, so they turn into this very sticky goo, and I add in the oats to that, and I've literally just baked it like that before. I might add in a little, just maybe a spoonful of sugar, and then I could add in whatever I've got, seeds, I could add in nuts, I could just add in anything you've got, and then on top of it, to make it go a really long way, if I have just a very small bar of chocolate, I've melted that bar of chocolate and like used the spoon and just kind of drizzled it on top of it, so there's a little bit of chocolate on each one. It's a really lovely treat for kids and a really nice snack. It's not too sweet, it's not too sugary, it's got a lot less sugar in it than processed flapjacks or oat cookies that you will buy. The next one is some kind of homemade trail mix. So any kind of seeds, any kind of raisins, any kind of dried fruit that you've got. I used to buy big bags of mixed dried fruit. So it was apricots, apples, bananas, anything like that. I would chop that up with seeds and nuts. And they would just have like a little, I used to put it in an egg cup, just a little egg cup full. So they'd have a little snacky bit of trail mix. The next snack, which kind of can be a dessert, can be a pudding, can be a sweet treat, is just buy yourself a very simple pot of plain yogurt. And then to the plain yogurt, I could add in maybe, just got a tiny bit of flapjack left, I'd crush in some flapjack with it at the end of it, or I might have made some homemade cookies and there's only 2 of them left. I'd chop up the homemade cookies and stir that into the yogurt. I might have just a little bit of honey. You know, you get to the bottom of a honey and there's not a lot left. Add a little bit of water, microwave it and swirl it up around, just get the tiniest tiny bit out and drizzle that across the top of honey. And also if you've got any raisins, anything like that, stick that into the yogurt too. It's a really, really cheap dessert. And I tell you what my kids used to love. They used to love, once in a blue moon, you get a pot and it on the side would be trail mix, or on the side would be seeds and nuts, or on the side would be jam, and you tipped it in the yogurt. So I used to say to themselves, well, we don't need to buy those corner yogurts. We can just make our own. Something else that I used to make for the children was homemade crackers. And homemade crackers is just kind of a version of pastry. It's got a little bit more fat in it. But I could take the tiniest amount of cheese, like the cheese the size of a matchbox, very finely grate that and stick that on the side. Any nuts or seeds that I had, chop that really finely, mix that in there and have that as crackers. And instead of having like cheesy potato crisps or something like that were just too expensive and I couldn't afford to buy, I would just make them up, a few of these little homemade crackers. Another treat that they used to like, a really good snack, is that I used to take a tin of chickpeas, I used to drain them, put them on a piece of baking paper and pop them in the oven with just maybe a tiny bit of oil and a bit of salt. And they kind of go crispy and puff up. And then there's another trick to do with this. Once they're on the tray and they've gone cold, you kind of group them all together. And the other one is that I would just get the smallest bar of chocolate, I would melt that, and then I would toss the roasted chickpeas in that chocolate, put it back on the tray so it dries out a bit like peanut brittle. And then I would just chop that up so they would have the roasted salted chickpeas with the chocolate coating on it as well. Absolutely yummy. Tin of chickpeas, still well under €1 for a very big tin here. Bar of chocolate here. If I had just a few cubes of chocolate left, I could still do that for around 50 cents. So for about €1.50, I could make a chocolatey, kind of salty chocolatey mixture of snack for 4 people. You can't buy snacks for 4 people for €1.50. The next one, and I used to call this to the children, I used to call this toast crackers or toast crisps. So the bread would come in a bag, all the slices. I'd have made up their sandwiches for their packed lunches for it. And I would save the crusts on either end until I had a whole bag full of it. And then every now and then I would take them out, cut them into little pieces, toss that in oil. So it could either be croutons, or if I didn't have much oil, because oil can be expensive, a little bit of oil, and then salt, pepper, maybe onion powder, garlic pepper, or maybe mixed herbs. And then pop that on a baking tray into the oven, or these days into the air fryer. And it would just give them something to nibble on. It's a bit like having a bag of crisps, a bag of chips, but you haven't got any chips, you haven't got any crisps to buy them. So I used to tell them, this is toast crackers, or toast crisps is what we used to call them. The next one I used to make for them, and this kind of makes some nice, just like one potato go quite a long way, is I would either cut this into very small wedges. So a wedge, then cut the wedge into a wedge, and the wedge into a wedge. So it was almost like a slice of potatoes. And I used to parboil that. So it was just literally in and out the boiling water, and then toss them in a bit of oil and then put them on a tray. So I put baking paper on the tray and then put them all out on it. So they were like homemade crisps. But so I used to call them homemade potato wedges, or homemade crisps, or homemade chips. And it was just a way of, they're hungry, they want something to eat, they're nagging you for something in between meals, or, it's a Saturday, it's school holiday, so they want kind of like a movie afternoon, they want a nibble, and I haven't got any money to buy anything, or got any more in the house. And that's what I'd make for them. So I would make them wedges. And then if I had no sour cream, I would get the yogurt and I would add in like the chili sauce to it. The red chili sauce, the squirty sriracha sauce, I think it might be called. I might add some of that in. or I might add in some smoked paprika so they could actually dip their homemade potato wedges into that. I used to like it. It's quite tasty. The final one that you can either make sweet or you can make salty, and I mean, come on, who hasn't done this all the time for their children, is just to buy a bag of popcorn kernels, corn kernels, and just make popcorn for them. And you know, if there's nothing else, I would just toss that in a bit of butter and a bit of salt. Tell them it's like being at the movies, you know, salty, buttery popcorn. And if you have got it, and you can make a caramel to go with that. So that's literally sugar in a pan. You can add water to it, cook that down till it makes a caramel. Toss the popcorn in that, let it go cold. It works. Hope those helped. So there you go. 10 homemade snacks that I used to make for our kids when we had absolutely no money at all. Let me know if you make homemade snacks, or you make homemade snacks for your kids or your grandchildren, or you made them for your children. What snacks did you make for your children that were obviously much cheaper and sometimes much less sugar and certainly no chemicals in comparison to the ones that you buy? Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.